I have worked with so many different types of athletes, from runners, beginners to advanced, from just normal tactical athletes to athletes going into special forces selection or ranger school or ranger regiment selection. And I found that most of them ask the wrong question. They're looking for what is the perfect workout. And they're not asking what workout should I be doing at this point in time. Programming isn't about finding the perfect workouts. There's a lot of different types of workouts that have different purposes. It's about putting them in an order that makes sense to get you to where you want to go, what your main goal is. I'm going to simplify my 2 endurance systems or philosophies that I've just developed over my years as a tactical strength and conditioning coach and now with this company. The first one I loosely call my American system because it was inspired by the coach Jack Daniels and his great book. And my second, which I just call my foreign system, was inspired by coaches like Pete Fitzner, Scott Johnston, and the Kenyan runner coach, brother Colm O'Connor. And so this one's more of a European, East African style training. But I've modified both my American and my foreign, or I also call that one the endurance first, which will make more sense when I get into it. I've modified them over the years to fit the athletes that I work with more, which are runners that have more performance-based strength training in their program than just a pure runner would, so they're a more well-rounded athlete, and tactical athletes that can't just be a pure runner. They need to be powerful and lethal at the same time. Both systems work extremely well. I've gotten endurance athletes to very high levels with both of them, but I'm going to explain the differences in them. And just for my American and foreign naming terminology, or endurance first, these are just my loose definitions of them. There's many coaches in both the US and of course foreign that do things differently. So you may be asking yourself at this point, what system is better? Like they're both different, but you don't know which one is better for you. I like to use the American system for tactical athletes because it introduces very hard intensity early, so high intensity intervals, which will keep them prepared for short, high intensity bursts of like, so a PT test or during, some combat operations. They can be asked to do anywhere from a sprint or a long distance, just hard thing at the same time, right? So a 2-mile run during a PT test and then a 12-mile ruck the next week. So it kind of is a good balance between high intensity of endurance. So it keeps them sharp on both ends. And it's also good for those that don't have a lot of gym strength because that high intensity interval, and especially those repetition intervals, you'll feel the burn in your legs, and that'll help with your muscular endurance in your legs. So they're good for those that don't have a lot of gym strength. Now, the foreign system is definitely better for just being a pure endurance athlete with a performance-based strength training program at the same time, of course, but you're not going to hit high intensity intervals at the very end. So if you don't have to potentially, have bursts of speed early on in your program for your job, like a tactical athlete or a police officer, something like that. And all you have to care about is your 5K or your marathon or anything in between that at the end of your program, then I would go with the foreign system for just pure endurance improvement because it really does wonders for building that lactate threshold early and just slowly easing into it. And it's good for those that maybe they've only done speed work as their high intensity and they never were training in that middle ground, and for those that have a good base of strength. So before we get into the differences of the two systems, we're going to talk about the similarities that both systems have in common. The first is there are 4 phases for each of my 2 systems. Number 1 is the base building phase, 2 is the intensity phase, 3 is the specificity phase, and then 4 is the taper phase. Specificity means you're just doing very specific training for the type of race or distance event or military event that you're training for. So that's also known, a lot of people hear that one and they think of the peaking phase. Both systems have 2 to sometimes 3 quality sessions per week. A quality session is just a harder session. So it's any session that's longer than your normal duration 30 to 70 minute zone 2 runs. I call these the shorter ones, although 70 minutes doesn't sound shorter to some. So this is your long easy run or just anything above a zone 2 intensity. For a guide on all these different intensities, I put together 2 videos in the past. The first one is a complete guide to high intensity training from 5K to marathon. So look that one up if you're interested in learning about lactate threshold, VO2 max, and running economy, the 3 pillars of high intensity. And if you want to hear more about low intensity training, which all of your short, easy zone 1 to 2 sessions are not quality days. So those are the days in between your quality days per week. Check out my zone 2 training explained video a while back. Both of them, you'll be able to see those links in your upper right hand corner. But if you are going to do 3 quality sessions in a week because you're a little bit more advanced, that third one, I would only recommend doing some strides. So very short, easier speed work. This is the least taxing out of all of the high intensity sessions. So for both of the programs, they have very similar volume recommendations for when you're starting out. You need to start out at a volume where your body can safely handle it, and then just work up from there. About no more than 3 miles per week if you're working up into new mileage you've never hit before. And if you're working back up through mileage you've hit before in the past, then you can go a little bit more, maybe 4 to 5 miles per week. I would recommend, even if you are a low volume runner, having at least 4 sessions a week, just so that you're tapping it enough so that you can keep making progress and you're not detraining because you're taking so many days in between your running sessions. And so that'd be a beginner split, and highly advanced people could do up to 7 workouts per week. And I would spend at least 30 minutes on each session. For both systems, we are going to consolidate the stress on our legs. So after a quality session, so a harder endurance session, I would recommend doing your strength training either the same day after that quality session or the very next day, followed by a recovery session, whether you're doing strength training or not. This is like a zone 1 extra easy jog, or my favorite, an incline treadmill walk, but you can also do it with an elliptical or Stairmaster or even a bike. And the last thing that they both have in common is you're going to need to take a recovery week every 3 to 4 weeks, depending on how old you are or how hard you've been pushing down on that gas pedal. And a recovery week, you just drop your volume from anywhere by 35 to 50%. So if you hit a 100-mile week, you're going to drop it down to anywhere from 65, anywhere between 50 and 65 miles. So much lower volume, and that's called your recovery week. So now we're going to get into the differences and just how to phase out those 4 different phases. The base training phase, they are the most similar. Both, you're doing almost all of your volume at a low intensity. So zone 2, nose breathing intensity. Both systems will have at least 1 day per week, no more than 2, of starting out with strides and then doing some hill sprints later on. These phases could be long. I'd recommend you taking nice long base building phases if you have the time for it. So they could be up to 12 weeks long. And just building up to higher mileage than you've ever hit before with low intensity training. And if they're long enough, that American system you can have repetition intervals, so short, really hard intervals with higher rest, okay? This really just prepares the body for the VO2 max training that is signature to the American system in phase 2, the intensity phase, but it's also going to boost your running economy in a way that's similar that the strides and hill sprints will, but it'll kind of give the legs a burn at the same time. And now the foreign or the endurance first system, we're not going to hit high intensity intervals at all in this base building phase. If they are long enough, we can do some very easy marathon intensity tempo work or some shorter threshold work. So zone 3 or very short duration zone 4, just to dip our toes into it before the intensity phase and build endurance. And of course, in the base building phase, you're going to have one weekly long run. So this one's significantly longer than any of those other workouts in the week. Could be anywhere from 90 minutes, or if you're highly advanced, it could be up to 2.5 hours. Okay, now here's where the phases really start to become different in the intensity phase, phase 2. All right. American system, we're going to hit it hard with VO2 max intervals. These are the most taxing type of high intensity workout. They are very hard and they boost your VO2 max, your ceiling. Okay, so the theory behind this is you got to have a high ceiling to then raise your lactate threshold up higher and have more room for your lactate threshold and your aerobic thresholds to increase. Because if your ceiling is low, you're not going to be able to raise your lactate threshold that much later. At least that's the theory behind the American system. So in that intensity phase, we're going to have one VO2 max session. You're going to maintain that long run. We're not going to progress it anymore after that base building phase. We're just going to maintain it at that point and keep building. And you could potentially have a stride workout. We're not doing hill sprints anymore because we're getting taxed enough from those VO2 max intervals. Now the foreign system is very different. Now we're just going to keep progressing or introduce some zone 3 marathon intensity or some lactate threshold work in the form of, threshold intervals if you're a 5 or a 10K athlete, or, a tempo run. Okay, so phase 3, our specificity phase. American system, we are now going to change from VO2 max improvement to threshold improvement and boost our lactate threshold with that session. And your other hard session of the week will be race specific, meaning you're training the intensity that you're going to be racing at or the pace that you're going to be racing at. So for 5K athletes, this would look like VO2 max intervals. For a 10K athlete, it'll look like threshold intervals. For half marathon athletes, it'll look like longer, easier threshold intervals. And for your marathon athletes, it'll look like very, very long runs with, that zone 3 easy mouth breathing marathon intensity as your other session. And we're going to just maintain our running economy with strides in both systems. Now that foreign system, we are going to progress from threshold to VO2 max for one of our sessions and sharpen us and just raise our ceiling at the last minute. And the other session, just like the American system, is going to be very specific to your race. Okay. And of course, in both systems, we're going to just keep maintaining our aerobic base with our low intensity work in between our hard sessions. And we're going to maintain our running economy with some strides as well so that we don't lose that efficiency later on in the program. Now the taper, both are the same. We're going to just gradually reduce volume over 1 to 3 weeks. 3 weeks if you're a marathon runner, 2 weeks if you're a half marathon runner. Could be 1 week for 5K to 10K athletes, but they can for sure benefit from a 2-week taper. Only several times a year, though, for very, very important races. If you take 2-week tapers too often, you're going to just kind of lose fitness over time. And we're going to maintain our intensity, so that's going to just drop in volume at the same time. And hey, if you haven't liked the video, please do that. It helps me out a lot. So there isn't one perfect training plan because life gets in the way. We're not robots where we can just have the perfect system. But, we can deliberately improve all four pillars of endurance with multiple types of systems. So our aerobic threshold, our lactate threshold, our VO2 max, and our running economy, both systems systematically improved those four pillars of endurance. They just did it at different ways at different times. And at the end of the day, the system that is right for you depends on your training background, your strengths, your weaknesses, and just what you enjoy doing a little bit more. Because if you enjoy it, you're more likely going to be successful at that training because you are embracing the process, and you're going to have a little bit more happiness and excitement and motivation when you go and do those workouts. So if you don't want to build your own plan, go check out my pre-made programs on my website, from anything from a 5K to a marathon, with different levels for each of those race distances. So like level 1 being a beginner, very low volume, level 6 being advanced. Those pre-made programs all use that American system. But if you're interested in one of my foreign system programs or my endurance first systems, I don't have any pre-made programs built for those on the website. They're a little bit more complex, but I can always build you a custom one. So please reach out, or you can work with me private coaching, and I can work with you weekly and give you customized programming 1 week at a time based on how you did last week. So thanks for watching. Until next time. So train hard, live ready, and embrace the process.